Hey, Sip&Talkers, and welcome back for another deep dive. You ready to, get those brain cells buzzing?
Always up for a good mental workout, especially with you.
Yeah.
So what fascinating rabbit hole are we jumping down today?
Well, picture this. I'm strolling through the park with my adorable pup, Coco, right? And bam, this giant billboard hits me with an ad.
Oh.
For the most eco-revolutionary, planet-saving dog food ever.
Wow.
For a second, I swear I felt like I was inducted into this super secret society of enlightened dog owners, single-handedly saving the rainforest, one kibble at a time.
Have the marketing wizards strike again.
Right.
They know how to tap into our desire to belong, to feel like we're part of something bigger.
Exactly. And it got me thinking, how many of these imagined communities are we part of without even realizing it? Are we really connecting based on shared values, or are we being subtly nudged into these groups?
That's a brilliant question, and it's a perfect segue into our deep dive today.
Oh.
We're going to explore this idea of imagined communities, especially in the context of power structures and how they might be used for control, in our guide for this journey. None other than Václav Havel and his brilliant work, The Power of the Powerless.
Okay, so Václav Havel, for those of us who haven't had the pleasure of reading his work, who was he? More importantly, why should we care what he has to say about power in communities?
Well, Havel was a fascinating guy. A playwright turned dissident turned president of the Czech Republic.
Wow.
He led the Velvet Revolution, which helped bring down communist rule in Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
He wasn't just theorizing about these ideas, he was living them.
Wow, talk about walking the walk.
Right.
So this wasn't some ivory tower intellectual. He was on the front lines fighting against an oppressive system.
Exactly. And that experience really shaped his analysis.
Yeah.
In The Power of the Powerless, Havel argues that totalitarian systems operate on this principle he calls post-totalitarianism. Think of it like totalitarianism 2.0, but way sneakier.
Totalitarianism 2.0 Sneaky Edition. Okay, you've got my attention. Break it down for me.
So it's a system where everyone from the government officials to the everyday folks are caught in this web of control.
Okay.
They're all playing their part, even if they don't really buy into the ideology.
Right.
They do it to avoid trouble.
So, kind of like how I almost fell for that eco-warrior dog food. I mean, for a minute, I was totally on board with their whole save the planet shtick.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
It's like we're all being subtly nudged to conform to a certain way of thinking or behaving, even if it's not something we truly believe in.
Right.
And that's where it gets a little scary. Havel argues that these systems demand absolute loyalty, even for the smallest thing.
Absolute loyalty. So, no room for questioning, no room for individual thought. Sounds a bit intense.
It is. Even something as simple as not displaying a certain slogan could land you in hot water.
Really?
You could be ostracized, discriminated against, or even worse, imprisoned, or, worse.
Oh my gosh.
It's this constant pressure to conform to fall in line.
Okay, now that is terrifying. It's like that saying, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. But does this only happen in extreme cases like dictatorships? Or can we see this play out in our everyday lives?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's what makes Havel's work so relevant today. He uses this powerful example of a greengrocer to illustrate how this pressure to conform works.
A greengrocer? Wait, hold up. What does someone selling fruits and veggies have to do with totalitarianism?
So picture this greengrocer. He's forced to display this sign in his shop window that says, "Workers of the world, unite." Now, he might not even believe in the message, but he puts it up anyway.
Why? Because he loves communist slogans.
Hardly. He does it to avoid trouble, to keep the authorities off his back. It's a small act, but it represents this huge conflict between his own desires and the demands of the system.
It's like he's trapped.
Yeah.
He's got to play the game to survive, even if it feels wrong.
Exactly. Havel calls this conflict the intention of life versus the intention of the system. You've got the individual's desires, their hopes, their values bumping up against the state's agenda.
Right. And often they have to suppress their own intention of life just to survive.
So basically it's like, do what we say or else.
Pretty much. And what's even more messed up is the hypocrisy at play.
Yeah.
They'll call themselves a people's government while completely ignoring what the people actually want. It's all about control disguised as something noble.
Okay, so how does this tie back to our original question about imagined communities? Are you saying all groups are just tools for control? That we should all become hermits and avoid human contact altogether?
Well, hold on a second. It's not about demonizing all communities. It's about recognizing that they can be used for good, or for, let's say, less than good purposes.
Right.
Sometimes these imagined communities are built on genuine shared values, but sometimes they're carefully constructed to manipulate and control us.
Oh, it's like we need to put on our critical thinking caps and examine the communities we're part of. Ask ourselves, are we here because we genuinely connect with the values, or are we being subtly influenced?
You got it. And that's where Havel's idea of alienation comes in.
Yeah. It's about taking a step back, examining the system, and choosing to resist those aspects that feel controlling or inauthentic.
Resisting the system. Now that sounds rebellious. Tell me more.
Yeah.
How do we even begin to do that?
Well, that's a big question, and one we'll definitely unpack further in part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay.
But for now, let's just say it starts with awareness. It's about recognizing that we have a choice.
Right.
That we don't have to blindly accept the intention of the system. We can start living in alignment with our own intention of life.
Ooh, I like that. Living in alignment with our own intention of life? Sounds pretty profound. Sip&Talkers, I hope you're taking notes. This is good stuff.
Uh-huh.
We'll be right back after a quick break to explore exactly how we can start resisting those sneaky systems and embracing our own truth. Don't go anywhere. I just want to give another shout out to Micky from MickyTolife. His channel is a treasure trove of inspiration, and he's a huge Sip&Talk fan.
Absolutely. Make sure to check him out and maybe even share your awesome podcast intro with him once you've created it. Welcome back, Sip&Talkers. Before the break, we were getting deep with Václav Havel's ideas about post-totalitarianism and how imagined communities can sometimes be used for less than noble purposes.
Right. Like we think we're joining these groups because we love saving the rainforest or knitting sweaters for orphan kittens. But maybe, just maybe, there's a whole other layer of manipulation going on beneath the surface.
It's definitely something to be aware of. And one of the most powerful tools these systems use is playing on our very human need for connection and belonging.
Right.
We all want to feel like we're part of something, that we have a purpose.
Totally. I mean, who doesn't want to feel like they belong?
Yeah.
Especially in this crazy, chaotic world. How do these systems exploit that need?
Well, they create this false sense of community.
Okay.
This idea that if you're not with us, you're against us.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly you're more likely to overlook any red flags or inconsistencies because you don't want to be the odd one out.
It's like that fear of missing out, right?
Yeah.
The FOMO.
No.
Nobody wants to be the one left standing on the sidelines while everyone else is having fun at the cool kids table.
Exactly. And it can get even more complicated. Have you ever heard of Stockholm Syndrome?
Wait, Stockholm Syndrome? Isn't that like when hostages start sympathizing with their captors? What does that have to do with, joining a book club or a fan group for your favorite band?
It might sound like a stretch.
Okay.
But there are some interesting parallels.
Yeah.
In situations where people are subjected to prolonged periods of control and manipulation, they can develop a psychological bond with their captors.
Right.
It's a way to cope with a scary and unpredictable situation.
Okay, but how does that apply to imagined communities? I mean, I'm not literally being held hostage by my online yoga group.
True, it's usually much more subtle. But think about it. If a group constantly pushes a certain ideology,
Yeah.
limits your access to outside information, and threatens you with consequences if you question things, doesn't that create a similar dynamic?
Whoa, I never thought about it like that. So you're saying we might start agreeing with the group's beliefs even if they go against our own values because it feels safer than rocking the boat?
It's a possibility. We're wired for connection, and sometimes the fear of rejection or isolation can be so strong that we convince ourselves we believe things we don't.
Okay, now I'm starting to feel a little uneasy.
Yeah.
Are you saying we're all just puppets dancing to the tune of some master manipulator? Is there any way to break free from this?
Absolutely. Havel believed that the key to resistance lies in living in truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's about consciously rejecting the lies, the hypocrisy, the BS of the system, and choosing to live in accordance with your own authentic values.
Living in truth.
Yeah.
I love that. It's like shining a light into the dark corners of our minds and saying, hey, I'm not buying what you're selling anymore.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming your agency, your power to think for yourself.
Right.
But I get it. It's easier said than done. When you're surrounded by this pressure to conform, it takes guts to stand up and say, this doesn't feel right.
Totally.
And
So how do we even start? How do we go from feeling trapped to living in truth? Do we need to go full-on hermit and live off the grid?
Yeah. Well, that's one option.
Okay.
But Havel offers some more practical strategies, too.
Yeah.
He talks about creating parallel structures, spaces where people can connect, share ideas, and build a life outside the confines of the system.
Parallel structures. Sounds a bit like a spy movie. What exactly are we talking about here? Secret societies? underground bunkers.
Not necessarily.
Oh, yeah.
It can be much simpler than that.
Okay.
Think of it as creating little pockets of freedom and authenticity.
Right.
It could be a book club where you discuss forbidden topics, a support group for people who've been ostracized, or even just having honest conversations with friends who dare to question things.
So it's like creating our own imagined communities, but ones based on truth and genuine connection, not control and manipulation.
Exactly. It's about building communities that empower us to think critically, challenge the status quo, and live in alignment with our values. And within these parallel structures, there are two main paths for resistance: what Havel calls dynamic resistance and static resistance.
Dynamic and static. I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Dynamic resistance is more active and confrontational. Think protests, revolutions, direct action to dismantle the system.
Okay, that sounds pretty intense. And maybe a little risky. What about this static resistance?
Static resistance is less about storming the barricades and more about a slow burn, a gradual awakening.
Okay.
It's about exposing the lies of the system, planting seeds of doubt, and encouraging people to question what they've been told.
So it's like a stealth mission to awaken people's minds.
Yeah.
I like it. It's a bit more my speed.
And it's fascinating to think about this alongside Hannah Arendt's work. She was a brilliant political philosopher who argued that even the most oppressive systems can't completely crush the human spirit.
Okay, now that is hopeful. So even in the darkest of times, there's still a spark of resistance that can't be extinguished.
Exactly. Arendt believed that human connection, the ability to empathize and relate to one another, is ultimately what makes us human. And even totalitarian regimes can't fully sever those bonds.
So it's like no matter how hard they try, they can't completely control our minds and hearts.
Right. And that's why this idea of static resistance is so powerful. If we can expose the lies, awaken people's critical thinking skills, and connect with each other on a deeper level, it can chip away at the foundation of these controlling systems.
Okay, so we've gone from dog food ads to totalitarian regimes to the power of human connection. My head is spinning.
There's a lot to process, I know. But the key takeaway here is that we have a choice. We can choose to be swept along by the current, accepting things blindly, or we can choose to be conscious, aware, and actively engaged in creating a world where truth and authenticity prevail.
So instead of feeling powerless, we can choose to embrace our power to think critically, to connect with others authentically, and to resist those forces that seek to control us.
Yeah.
That is incredibly empowering. But how do we take this from a theoretical concept to something we can actually apply in our everyday lives?
That's an excellent question, and it's something we'll explore further in the final part of our deep dive. Stay tuned, Sip and Talkers. We're about to get really practical.
Welcome back, Sip and Talkers. We're in the final stretch of our deep dive into imagined communities and how they can be both empowering and, well, a little bit manipulative.
We've covered a lot of ground, from those sneaky dog food ads to the complexities of totalitarian regimes, and even touched on the incredible resilience of the human spirit.
Yet we've learned that power structures, even in their subtlest forms, can use these imagined communities to exert control and encourage conformity.
Right.
But the good news is we have the power to resist.
That's right. We're not just passive bystanders. We can choose to live in truth, to question the narratives we're being fed, and to build authentic connections based on shared values.
Okay, but let's get practical. It's all well and good to talk about resisting oppressive systems. But what about those everyday situations where we feel pressured to conform?
Right.
Like when your friends are all raving about the latest gadget, or that nagging feeling that you need to buy a certain brand to fit in.
Yeah.
How do we apply Havel's ideas in those moments?
That's where static resistance comes into play. Remember, it's about social awakening, about planting seeds of doubt and encouraging critical thinking.
Right. So instead of just going with the flow, we need to pause, take a breath, and ask ourselves, is this something I genuinely believe in, or am I just trying to fit in?
Exactly. It's about developing that inner skeptic, that little voice that says, hold on a second, let's examine this a bit closer.
Yeah.
It's about being willing to challenge the status quo, even if it means standing out from the crowd.
I like that. So it's not about becoming a conspiracy theorist or rejecting everything outright. It's about being a thoughtful, engaged individual who's not afraid to think for themselves.
Precisely. And this ties into another crucial aspect of Havel's philosophy, the idea of responsibility.
Responsibility. Okay, I'm listening. How does responsibility fit into all of this?
Well, Havel believed that true freedom goes hand in hand with responsibility. It's not just about demanding our individual rights, but also about recognizing our responsibility to others, to our communities, and to the world around us.
So it's like freedom isn't just about doing whatever we want, but about using our freedom to make a positive impact on the world.
Exactly. And this sense of responsibility extends to the communities we choose to be a part of. It's about asking ourselves, are these communities contributing to something positive? Are they fostering understanding, compassion, and cooperation?
Wow, those are some powerful questions. It's like a litmus test for the groups we choose to align ourselves with.
And if we find that a community isn't aligned with our values, that it's more about control than empowerment, we have a responsibility to speak up, to challenge the status quo, or even to walk away.
I agree. It's about recognizing that our choices have consequences, and that we have the power to shape the world around us, both through the communities we join and the actions we take.
And it's not just about dismantling harmful communities, it's also about creating new ones, communities based on authenticity, respect, and a shared desire for a better world.
Yes. It's about seeking out those spaces where we can truly belong, where we can be ourselves, and where we can work together to create positive change. And those spaces can be found everywhere in our local communities, online, or even just within our circle of friends.
So Sip&Talkers, we encourage you to take a moment to reflect on the communities you're part of. Ask yourself, are they empowering or controlling? Are they aligned with my values? And most importantly, are they contributing to a better world?
And if the answer is no, don't be afraid to seek out new connections, build bridges, and create spaces where authenticity, compassion, and a shared sense of purpose can flourish. Remember, the power to change the world starts with each and every one of us. So cheers to living in truth, to building authentic connections, and to creating a world where everyone feels empowered to be their true selves. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive here on Sip and Talk.
Remember to sip responsibly and think critically.
Right.
Cheers!